I absolutely must report something today. It's hard to bring this up at such a joyous occasion, but please listen to me. Today is my father-in-law's birthday, and 15 family members are gathered, but my husband Mike stood up with a solemn expression. Since the chatter had settled down, everyone naturally turned their eyes towards my husband. Wondering what was happening, the relatives waited in a rustle for his next words, and, confirming this, my husband began to report slowly. It has come to light that my wife, Shelley, has a debt of $100,000. It appears she accrued it without telling me, and I only found out about it recently. It seems the losses from her work at the securities company are to blame. My husband's report definitely reached the ears of the relatives, but their reaction was muted. No one spoke up. That's because the relatives know that I work seriously. So it was unbelievable for them that I would have a debt of $100,000. Frustrated by their sluggish response, my husband pulled out a paper from his pocket and held it up so that the relatives could see. Everyone, what I'm saying is true. Here is the evidence. The IOU for $100,000. The displayed promissory note indeed had my name and was stamped with my seal. Though it looked like something anyone could make with a word processor, my husband had a smug look. As if feeling victorious, he then directed a cold gaze and words at me alone. I've been holding this in for a long time, Shelley. As a wife, you fail to fulfill your duties. Despite how hard I work to earn, you, as my wife, do not support me. On top of that, a $100,000 debt. I'm fed up. I'll handle the debt, but you pay what you have now. Influenced by the promissory note and my husband's behavior, the relatives began to believe his words gradually, and the murmuring grew louder. But I alone was calmly observing my husband's demeanor. Because I could see that my husband was lying. He's concocted this grand tale just to take money from me. Moreover, it's something that could easily be discovered with a little investigation. Such a foolish thing. $100,000 in debt? Could you stop making things up? Do you think I know nothing? With those thoughts in my heart, I faced my husband again. What are you acting so smug about? Just admit your guilt. I'm even considering divorce. As if using divorce as a threat, my husband declared. But as I remained calm, my husband's actions became more intense. Correspondingly, my heart grew colder, but at the same time, my resolve solidified. If he's going to trap someone with lies, it seems the only option is to corner him thoroughly. I'll expose everything in front of the relatives. I've prepared for this. I took a deep breath and glared at my husband. My husband slowly turned his gaze towards me as if to confirm his fabricated evidence. Seeing his smug, triumphant face made me feel nauseous. Today, I'm going to push this guy into hell. So, you're saying I'm not fulfilling my duties as a wife? Then, I'd like to hear about you. How about your own duties? My unexpected retort clearly shook my husband. Before he could retort, I pressed on. I work full-time, just like you. I clean and do the laundry before going to work, and no matter how tired I am, I cook dinner for both of us when I get home. On weekends, I always get up and do the housework as usual. What about you? Have you ever done even a little housework? My husband opened his mouth to respond but just gaped like a fish, unable to speak. There's no way he could respond. He never does any housework. Despite it not being the age where all housework should be done by the wife, he declares that housework is women's work and doesn't lift a finger. Even though I'm not a housewife and ours is a dual-income household, he should contribute somewhat to our home. The relatives have also begun to look at my husband with criticism. I decide to expose my husband's daily behavior to the relatives. So, you come home late and can't do housework. But your late returns aren't due to work, right? Weren't they because you were out drinking? Even then, you could at least make up for it on your days off, but instead, you sleep past noon or just go out. You don't do any housework at all. My husband, used to me being docile, was shocked by my aggression, amusingly flustered. I had never spoken so strongly to my husband before. Therefore, we've never had a fight as a couple. However, it's not because our marriage is harmonious, it's simply because I've been enduring it. My husband has a strangely high pride, and he dislikes being contradicted. Even though I'm just expressing my opinion, he takes it as a negation of himself. Whenever I even slightly disagree, he becomes irate and uncontrollable. Soon after we got married, I realized this and gave up on expressing my opinions, opting instead to endure. In a panic, my husband scratched his head, his eyes darting around as he searched for words, and he finally retorted. "What are you talking about? Men have work-related social obligations. I can't just leave on time like you. You wouldn't understand because you're a woman." His excuse, as if he's too busy to do household chores, was the last straw for me. I have social commitments too. There should be no difference between men and women in that regard. I turn down invitations from colleagues because of home responsibilities and manage my time to balance work and home. I work full-time just like you. Yet, I still manage the housework without neglect. You just wander around drinking after work. Moreover, you're jealous of my higher income and constantly complain about your lower salary. If you're unhappy with your salary, why not get a qualification or study harder instead of just playing around? If you don't make an effort, your salary will never increase. My dismissive attitude silenced my husband for a while. His face turned red because he was flustered by the truth. I just stated the facts. Yet, my husband, with his high pride and competitiveness, retorted out of spite. "Shut up! How dare you, a woman, act so high and mighty? Don't talk back to me, a man. No matter what you say, your debt won't disappear. You have a $100,000 debt. I will never forgive you for having been in debt." Realizing he was at a disadvantage, he brought up the debt again, thinking it was his trump card. However, the debt is nothing but a fabrication by my husband. I have evidence to prove it. As I was considering how to dismantle his claims, the relatives intervened. Watching us argue, they seemed to think it was just a typical marital dispute. Now, you two should just talk it out," they suggested soothingly. But this is not a mere domestic issue. I am exposing the true nature of my husband who has betrayed his wife and is trying to bring her down. I want the relatives to understand that. To thoroughly discredit my husband who keeps making excuses and running away, I decided to play my trump card. "You're hiding something too, aren't you?" At my statement, my husband Mike began to panic amusingly. He seemed intent on maintaining his silence, yet his eyes were darting from side to side, clearly betraying him. Since he appeared to be planning to ride this out without saying anything, I decided to explain. "You're cheating, aren't you? The places you go to after work aren't for work-related socializing. It's a lounge with female employees, right? You've fallen for one of them there, spending a considerable amount of money to win her over. Now, the two of you are involved." After saying this all in one breath, I paused to watch Mike's reaction. His face turned bright red, and he clenched his fists tightly. It was clear he was panicking because I had pointed out the truth, but he still wasn't ready to admit it. He was just too stubborn. "What? Me, at a lounge? That's just a desperate fabrication you've come up with," he retorted, desperately trying to deny it, sweat beginning to bead on his forehead. "Just one more push. A fabrication? I have evidence, you know." Seeing my confident demeanor, Mike gritted his teeth in frustration. It's just work. Going to a cabaret club as part of work socializing is one thing, that's all it is. I haven't contributed any money or gotten involved with anyone. It's some misunderstanding. He exaggerated his words, desperately trying to wriggle out of the accusation. However, the moment I mentioned the word cheating, the atmosphere in the room shifted dramatically. The relatives began to look at Mike with suspicion, whispering among themselves. Especially the women sent him piercing, cold stares. Even my in-laws, who had been silently observing the unfolding events, could no longer keep quiet upon hearing that their son might be cheating. They looked at Mike sternly. "Mike, is it true? Are you cheating? Don't stay quiet, answer us." They demanded sternly. I'm not cheating. Shelley is lying to cover up her debt. She's trying to frame me by lying that I'm cheating. Believe me, the word of your own son, mom, dad. The in-laws looked back and forth between Mike and me, their faces etched with confusion. Unlike my husband, who is full of lies, my in-laws are very sensible, ordinary people. However, they also want to believe in their son. They seem unsure whether what I've said is true. As for my husband, he decided to stick to his story and get out of this predicament by feigning ignorance and lashing out. He doesn't seem to plan on changing his stance that I'm the one lying. He furrowed his brow and glared at me. Arguing here wouldn't solve anything. It's gotten a bit long. There's no point in arguing without any evidence. How about this? Let's discuss this again on another day. I'll bring evidence next time. Relieved by my suggestion, my husband nodded vigorously. He must think he's escaped a difficult situation for now. Typical of my naive husband. That sounds fine. But are you sure, you? Boasting about having evidence. You might end up regretting it. My husband, who had been red-faced and sweaty just moments ago, thought he had managed to escape and looked completely relieved. He smirked and seemed relaxed. He should enjoy this brief respite while he can. The one who will end up regretting will not be me, but him. Later, the relatives gathered again at my in-laws' house. I arrived on time and ended up welcoming my late-arriving husband. He entered the living room with a young woman, and the smell of cheap perfume filled the air. The woman was considerably younger than my husband, probably just in her 20s. With narrow eyes and thin lips, her plain face was heavily made up. Her eyelids fluttered under densely applied false lashes as she looked up at my husband. My husband also seemed pleased, his hand resting on the buttocks of the woman, who wore a tight miniskirt. Clearly inappropriate to bring to his parents' house, but my husband didn't seem to care. Without any apology for being late, he introduced her to the relatives. This is Jen. Nice to meet you all. Jen said in a saccharine, somewhat unclear tone. Her casual greeting, completely ignoring the atmosphere of the room, clearly irritated the relatives. Jen, you said you had something you wanted to say here, right? My husband prompted her. Yeah. My dad was deceived by this woman. And he lost a lot of money because of her. Jen stated, pointing her manicured index finger directly at me. Her explanation was lacking, and it seemed the relatives didn't quite understand the situation. They waited for more explanation, but Jen just smiled contentedly, apparently satisfied with her statement. Jen's father runs a company. He was advised by Shelley, who works at a securities firm, to invest, but it turned out to be a big loss. It seems it was a very risky investment, and it wasn't properly explained. Jen's father demanded compensation for the losses, which Shelley agreed to repay. However, she could only repay a small part of it. A significant amount remains as a debt. Explained my husband with a smirk, clearly enjoying putting me in a difficult position. He seems incredibly pleased to corner me, especially today, as he brought Jen as a witness, exuding a very confident attitude. He sat heavily on the living room sofa, crossing his legs. Next to him, Jen leaned on him as if depending on her younger companion. My husband probably misconstrues this as Jen relying on him. So, you need to hurry up and pay back the money you owe my dad. Jen said, opening her narrow eyes wide and glaring at me. She probably thinks she's intimidating, but her youthful and plain features made it completely unthreatful. I almost laughed out loud but also felt utterly astounded. This woman, Jen, seemed quite immature, not just in appearance but in substance too. Does she really think such a childish fabrication can deceive me? If they are going to coat their claims with lies, I will confront them with the truth. Just then, the intercom rang timely. I went to the door and welcomed an elderly man who had just arrived. I led the man into the living room. Jen's expression changed dramatically at the sight of the man. She gasped, uncrossed her legs, and straightened up. Dad! Why are you here? Jen's face lost all color, and she was visibly shaking. Just by looking at her reaction, it was clear she had been lying. "Oh, Jen. You're looking quite pale. Is everything all right? Is there something troubling you?" I paused significantly before beginning to speak to the relatives. "Everyone, Jen here is a hostess at a lounge." The relatives began whispering to each other with comments like, "I knew it," and "I thought her makeup was too heavy." The women shot piercing looks of disgust towards Jen. "And she is actually Mike's affair partner." Having said this, I looked at my husband. Mike didn't seem to intend to hide his relationship with Jen and maintained a complacent smile. But this was just the beginning. Now, I would reveal a secret about Jen that even my husband didn't know. Jen hasn't just been involved with Mike. She's also been frequently visiting a nightclub. She's been deeply infatuated with a particular man there and has spent quite a sum on him. Soon she ran out of money and started borrowing. It began with small amounts, but because she borrowed from disreputable sources, the debt quickly snowballed. My revelation seemed to come as a complete shock to my husband, who looked at Jen with a face full of astonishment. Let him slowly savor the shock of being betrayed by someone he trusted. Poor Jen decided to deceive Mike. She concocted a false story about losses from an investment I supposedly recommended to her father and how she ended up in debt. My husband's face turned even paler. He seemed to have finally realized that he had been deceived. He looked at Jen accusingly, but she just turned away, ignoring him. But there's more to this story, and here comes the climax. "Mike, who exactly do you think has been talking about debts?" "The $100,000 in debt belongs to Jen." With this finishing blow, my husband's face turned ashen, and he seemed to lose all strength, his eyes wandering vacantly as if his soul had left him. I spread out the evidence I had already obtained from the detective agency on the table. Photos of Jen getting cozy with a host. Photos of her giving an expensive watch as a gift, presumably splurging on him. Photos of her entering a consumer finance service to take out loans. And the loan documents for Jen's debts. All the evidence corroborated my story. My husband remained silent, a shell of himself. Beside him, Jen's face had turned pale, her eyes darting around, probably trying to think of an excuse. But with all this evidence, it would be impossible. "Jen! What the hell were you thinking?" A furious shout filled the room. The voice belonged to Jen's father. With a robust physique, his face looked terrifying, like a demon's, and even I, who was not being scolded, felt a shiver. Scolded, Jen changed from her frivolous attitude to shrinking in fear. "I let you go to the city because you said you wanted to try living there, thinking it would be good social experience, but it seems I was mistaken. I had no idea you were working at a lounge. And on top of that, getting into debt over frequent visits to a host club. Come back home right now." With the formidable presence of her father about to strike, tears welled up in Jen's eyes. Jen's father runs a company. I also count him among my clients at the brokerage firm where I work. In Jen's story, this part alone was true. However, everything else was a lie. I recommended sound investments to Jen's father, and I have indeed generated profits, earning his trust. In short, the debt story Jen told was an utter fabrication. Jen was trying to deceive me to steal money from me. Such a childish and despicable method is the only way to describe it. Jen's father, who had looked ferocious until just now hung his head in disappointment. He must be disappointed in his daughter's foolish actions. I hear Jen is an only child. Since she was a late-life child, he raised her with great care. However, perhaps he overprotected her too much, and she grew up without acquiring basic social norms, as her father lamented. Her father turned to me and apologized. "Shelley, I am deeply sorry for this incident. My daughter has caused you trouble. This is all due to my lack of supervision as a parent." I hurried to stop the father as he almost prostrated himself. "Please, sir. Your daughter is an adult. She must take responsibility for her actions herself." Hearing this, the father nodded deeply. As a business owner and a person of character, he is commendable. It's a mystery how a daughter like Jen could have been raised by such a respectable father. The father made Jen stand in front of me and bow her head. This is how it is. I am very sorry. Come on, Jen, apologize properly. Half forced by her father, Jen lowered her head slightly. Her expression was sullen, like a child reprimanded for mischief, not seeming truly apologetic. I'm sorry. Her voice was barely audible. I will ensure she takes responsibility. The crime of trying to deceive me and her father is not a light matter. You will be hearing from our lawyer soon, so please be prepared for that. At the mention of the word lawyer, Jen flinched, her shoulders trembling. She must have thought she could deceive me on a whim, but such behavior is certainly not forgivable. As a working adult, she ought to take responsibility, of course. I'm truly sorry. I apologize again, and we will also pay compensation, her father said. Then he pulled Jen along and left the room. After Jen and her father left, a brief silence fell over the living room. The remaining husband wandered his eyes around as if surveying the situation. No one here is on the husband's side. The in-laws and other family members are casting doubtful looks at him, waiting for his apology. Now that his supposed main witness, Jen, has vanished and it's clear everything was a farce, what excuse does he plan to make? I turned towards my husband. Like a frightened puppy, he averts his eyes. He seems to understand that he is in a disadvantageous position. What are you going to do? It seems like everything was a lie. Apologizing here might have improved the situation a bit. Perhaps the in-laws and other family members' attitudes might have changed. However, my husband chose to be defiant. What can I do? I had no choice but to do this. His demeanor became defiant again. The fear in his eyes turned to determination, and he glared back at me. I glared back just as fiercely. What do you mean you had no choice? You're just too perfect. You earn more than me, your husband, and you manage all the housework. That doesn't leave much room for me as a husband. I felt suffocated by your perfection, so I cheated to give myself a break. What? I was utterly speechless at my husband's selfish excuse, and it seemed the in-laws and other relatives felt the same way. Mike, do you even understand what you're saying? That's incredibly selfish. That's right. Reflect on what you've done and apologize to Shelley. The in-laws confronted my husband, but he never changed his attitude until the end. I'm sorry, Shelley. I don't recall raising a child like this. I guess I have to think we never had a child. I'm sorry, Shelley. The in-laws apologized to me, but I had no intention of blaming them. They have always been sincere towards me. My husband is an adult too. He must take responsibility for his actions. I can no longer live with such a husband. I decided I was prepared to live on my own. Given what's happened, I can't live with you anymore. I'll be filing for divorce and seeking alimony. Divorce? Wait. I can't afford to pay alimony. My husband panicked, finally realizing the seriousness of the situation. He had been depending on my income, living beyond his means. His daily visits to the lounge and the luxury gifts he gave to Jen were all possible because he dipped into my salary. He also has no habit of saving, so it will be difficult for him to pay any alimony. However, I have no intention of showing mercy here. I was the one who was unilaterally cheated on and hurt. I haven't even heard an apology. I'm sorry. I'll help with the housework from now on. Please, just don't ask for a divorce. My salary alone isn't enough. Don't joke with me. Helping with housework? Sharing household duties is a normal part of being married. And stop relying on my salary. All right. But please, at least spare me the alimony. Don't be so presumptuous. After you easily betrayed me. You need to take full responsibility. My resolute stance left my husband deflated. Seeing him crumble finally cleared the lingering fog in my heart. Later, I hired a lawyer and demanded alimony from both my husband and Jen. Due to the affair and their attempt to swindle money, the alimony was considerably higher than usual. Both my husband and Jen came begging for a reduction, but I firmly refused. Furthermore, my husband lost his job after his company found out he conspired with his mistress to deceive his wife. Now jobless, he struggles even for daily expenses and has turned to his parents for help. However, both his parents and our relatives have disowned him after learning the full extent of his actions. Now completely isolated, my husband juggles day jobs as he tries to make ends meet and pay the alimony. Jen, burdened with her own debts and alimony, also turned to her parents for help. But they refused, telling her she must face the consequences of her actions. Under strict supervision from her parents, she's working various jobs to pay off her debts. As for me, I have finally found some peace. No longer being manipulated by a selfish husband, I'm enjoying a comfortable life. When we were living together, even after coming home exhausted from work, I had to immediately start doing housework without any rest. Now, if I'm tired, I can just eat out, or even go out for drinks with colleagues. Weekends are no longer consumed by cleaning and laundry. It feels like I've returned to my single days, going to movies and shopping. Lately, I've been reflecting on something. When he was single, my husband had ambition and was serious about his work. He would study related to his job even after hours. I was attracted to these qualities, which is why I married him. Wanting to please him and help him focus on his work, I may have taken care of him too much. As a result, he developed lazy habits and lost his drive for work. It's similar to how Jen, coddled by her parents, grew up to be a spoiled and selfish adult. Trying to do what's best for someone doesn't always lead to good outcomes. I hope to use these reflections to lead a richer life.
Oh, your father is standing up. Come quickly.
In my surprise, my voice broke into a strange squawk. No way. What the? Echoed my husband in equal shock. Seeing our astonishment, my father-in-law gently said, "Well then, shall we get going? To our spa retreat." My name is Rachel. I'm a 55-year-old housewife. My husband, Bob, is an ordinary office worker of the same age. Our son, Michael, is also an office worker, married, and a father to a baby boy not even a year old. His wife is a very nice person and our family relationships are good. However, the discord with my husband's family was always a problem. This goes back to when we decided to get married. At the age of 27, we were colleagues in love. I had heard that he came from an ordinary family, but when it came time to get married, it turned out that his family was actually wealthy and all his family members had impressive backgrounds. His parents had been successful in running a trading company, and his younger brother, Kevin, who is 2 years younger than Bob, had graduated from a prestigious university and was actively running an IT company. By the way, Kevin had already been married and his wife was a successful career woman. During the meet and greet with his family, my mother-in-law landed the first punch, "You're the one? As expected, you seem to have no outstanding qualities. You must be happy to become the bride of a wealthy family like ours." Furthermore, the mother-in-law and Kevin's wife got along very well. I felt a bit uneasy, but I believed Bob when he said, "Don't worry. I've always been disliked by my mother, and I've had little contact with the family." And we got married as planned. Ever since we got married, my mother-in-law has been making snide remarks at me. When I gave birth to our first son through a difficult C-section, she said, "C-section is such an easy way to give birth." Kevin's wife gave birth naturally, and it was a breeze. High-achieving career women just operate on a different level. When our son entered elementary school, she said, "Kevin's kid goes to a famous private school." Bob remained calm, but one day he told me this story. "I've always been compared. No matter what I did, I was always just average, while Kevin was smart, good at sports, and could do anything. So, Mother always showed interest in him. Whenever she had the chance, she prioritized Kevin. The only refuge I had was our father. Dad treated Kevin and me equally. But it seemed like Mom didn't like that, and over time,
I think their relationship started to deteriorate.
Indeed, as Bob said, my father-in-law is a very gentle and calm person. Whenever my mother-in-law said something awful to me, he would casually send me supportive texts and even apologize on occasion. When our son started elementary school, it was our father-in-law who gifted him a wonderful backpack. And when Bob made a mistake at work and was ordered to relocate for a while, it was his father who provided us with emotional and financial support. My father-in-law retired from managing the trading company at the age of 75. The mother-in-law retired at the same time, and that brings us to the present. I have grown to feel an indescribable sense of gratitude towards my father-in-law. However, my father-in-law fell and hit his tailbone. It seems he slipped on the stairs at home. When we rushed to Bob's parents' house out of concern, we found the mother-in-law and Kevin's family there. The mother-in-law said,
"You are so careless. You need to rest for a while." "So, I've been thinking about moving in together."
Us, my husband asked, to which the mother-in-law replied, "Of course not. Who would want to live with plain folks like you who are content with mediocrity?" I meant Kevin and his wife. They're top-notch in everything, so I don't have to worry about my old age. And that's how the cohabitation with their parents and Kevin's family began. Our house and my husband's parents' home are just about a 10-minute drive away. As expected of a wealthy family's home, it's a magnificent house with even a small pond in the garden, looking like a mini park. My father-in-law, who loves gardening, had planted many colorful flowers in the yard. Not long after they started living together, I visited my husband's parents' house to check on the situation. When I went into my father-in-law's room, believe it or not, he was laid to rest in a dimly lit corner of the walk-in closet. But that's not all. The study that my father-in-law had been using before his injury was now being used nonchalantly by my husband's younger brother. I was so shocked by the situation that I complained to my mother-in-law.
"Isn't the way you're treating him terrible?"
My mother-in-law, with an indifferent look on her face, retorted, "Oh, since he won't be using it, Kevin is just making good use of it for his work from home." She said that nonchalantly.
"But still, it's pitiful for him to be in such a dark place."
When I got angry, my mother-in-law got even angrier. "We're just using unused space. Don't you understand the concept of making good use of space?" I couldn't respond to her anymore and went back to my father-in-law.
"I'm sorry for causing you worry."
My father-in-law said apologetically.
"No, it's nothing. Is there anything I can do to help?"
Then, my father-in-law, looking lonely, said, "If it's not too much trouble, could you water the flowers in the garden for me?" Looking at the garden, I saw the once beautiful flowers wilting. Fortunately, I also loved gardening and readily agreed. From then on, I used the excuse of gardening to visit my husband's parents' house daily and also take care of my father-in-law. Although my mother-in-law and brother-in-law seemed annoyed, I couldn't be bothered with that when thinking about my father-in-law. After some time, my father-in-law had his birthday. My mother-in-law informed us that they would have a family party for my father-in-law's 80th birthday. My husband and I were also invited and we were supposed to have a fun birthday party. On the day of the party, when we arrived at the house, the party had already started and my mother-in-law and brother-in-law were chatting. But my father-in-law was nowhere to be found.
Where is he?"
Then, my mother-in-law answered with a smile.
"Huh? He's in his usual spot. It's too much trouble to move his bed, right? He told us to go ahead and have fun without him."
I was dumbfounded. And then I got angry.
"But that doesn't mean you should leave your husband alone. This is supposed to be a celebration for him."
My mother-in-law, looking irritated, said, "Well then, why don't just the two of you go to him? I don't like being in such a dark place."
"Understood."
As I said that, my husband mumbled, "Mom, that's not right." And we both went to my father-in-law.
"Oh, you've come."
My father-in-law greeted us with immense joy at our visit.
"Happy birthday. We hope your injury heals quickly and you regain your strength soon."
We celebrated his birthday in the dimly lit room. He was delighted by the yellow umbrella we gifted him, hoping he would use it when he got better. He stared at it happily for a long time. Even after his birthday, I continued to help him with the garden flowers every day. However, he remained bedridden. Then, one day, something astonishing happened. As I arrived at my husband's parents' house early in the morning, my mother-in-law and brother-in-law, with their large suitcases, appeared in front of me.
Well, take good care of him, okay?
What?
What do you mean?
Surprised, I turned to my mother-in-law, who said, "We're off to a week-long trip to Hawaii." It's obvious if you look. Really, you can be so slow.
I wasn't informed about any trip. I replied. There was no need to tell you. After all, you're here every day taking care of my husband.
What?
What about him? He'll be fine if you take care of him. We can't take him along. We're tired of caring for him every day. Don't we even get a break?
My mother-in-law started to get angry. That's right, chimed in the brother-in-law and his wife. I was flabbergasted, beyond anger.
All right then. Safe travels.
I said this with a thick layer of sarcasm and took the house key from her.
Can't wait for the beach, it's been a while.
Ignoring my glaring stare, my mother-in-law and the brother-in-law's family left. Once they were gone, I quickly finished gardening and went into my father-in-law's room. I'm really sorry, Rachel, his face looked downcast. No worries, just rest easy, I told him. I placed a small table next to his bed and laid out his favorite dishes. Then, I called my husband, and the three of us had dinner. Despite the circumstances, our lively dinner tasted great and was enjoyable. Suddenly, I noticed my father-in-law, who was sipping his soup, had teary eyes.
Is everything all right? Did something not taste good?
Worried, I asked him, to which he quietly replied.
No, it's not that. I'm just very grateful for you. You're really the best daughter-in-law one could hope for.
Even though my mother-in-law and brother-in-law's family would always have lively dinners downstairs, my father-in-law would spend his days alone upstairs. Just thinking about it made my heart ache. Since the next day was a day off, my husband and I decided to stay at their house for the night. We had a pleasant chat until my father-in-law fell asleep. The next morning, I was shocked when I saw the garden. My father-in-law was standing there, tending to the flowers.
What are you doing? Good morning, Rachel.
As if nothing had happened, he was gardening. I rushed to call my husband.
Bob, your dad, he's standing up. Come quick.
I exclaimed, my voice high-pitched with surprise.
What are you talking about? Dad's bedridden, remember?
My husband rushed to the porch, only to be equally surprised. Whoa, what? Seeing our stunned faces, my father-in-law calmly said,
Well, shall we go on a spa trip then? Huh?
Ignoring our surprise, my father-in-law remained composed and asked us to prepare for a one-night trip. In our state of shock, we did as told, went home, packed for a one-night trip, and returned. Sure enough, my father-in-law was still standing, looking very energetic.
Could you drive?
We headed to a spa inn. Once we settled down, we asked him, what on earth is happening? With a grin, my father-in-law confessed, I'm sorry for deceiving you. I overheard a secret conversation between my wife and Kevin shortly after we started living together. The conversation went something like this. He's gonna be bedridden at this rate. It's really a bother, said my mother-in-law. Then let's put him in a good facility. He doesn't have much time left. Let's change the ownership of the land and house to us before he passes away. If we get him to write a will, it'll be perfect. As long as we get a considerable portion, that is. He's bedridden, I can convince him easily, said Kevin. That's a good idea. Once we decide on this, we should act quickly. When we return from the vacation in Hawaii that we're gonna take with his pension savings, let's put our plan into action, said my mother-in-law. Sounds good, agreed Kevin. My father-in-law, who overheard this, knew not only of their plans for after his demise but also of their vacation to Hawaii. They are not my family anymore, he thought to himself. And he decided not to leave his land, house, or assets to his wife and Kevin. To fool them, he decided to pretend to be bedridden and maintained his leg strength by walking around the second floor when no one was around. And so, he had been thinking all along about who to let inherit the estate. My father-in-law said proudly.
I've been feigning bedridden all this time, waiting for the right opportunity. I want you all to inherit my estate.
My mother-in-law and brother-in-law, who had been enjoying a trip to Hawaii, returned home a week later. By that time, my father-in-law had already consulted with a lawyer he had hired in advance and had transferred the ownership of the land and house to my husband. Furthermore, he had finalized a will regarding the inheritance. Then, on the day of their return, my mother-in-law and others were surprised to see my father-in-law walking briskly around. "What's happening?" they exclaimed in astonishment. He told them, "We need to talk about the future. Come to the living room now." He called all the family members into the living room.
"Hey, why are you standing?"
my mother-in-law asked, shocked.
"I've been well for a while. I've been doing physical therapy secretly at night after you all have gone to bed. I've seen through all your plans." "What plans?"
My mother-in-law played dumb.
"Weren't you trying to put me in a nursing home, make this land and house yours, and make sure you inherit all the estate?"
His strong words made his mother-in-law and brother-in-law, Kevin, pale.
"Dad, you must be mistaken. I've heard with my own ears the conversation you had with her in my room. There's no mistake. You must have enjoyed the Hawaii trip with the pension I had saved. It's easy to see if you look at the bank book."
He glared at them and said, "First of all, about this land and house, I've decided to give them to my eldest son, Bob." He spread the deed on the table.
"What?"
His mother-in-law and Kevin were petrified.
"There's more to it."
He continued the conversation regardless of their reactions.
"I've decided to ask Bob and his wife to manage my estate. I've made a will too." "Why?" "No offense, but Bob is just an average worker. We can manage money better. After all, we run a business."
Kevin finally interjected.
"Managing money is indeed challenging. That's why I've introduced them to a competent lawyer and tax accountant." "But Kevin is superior to Bob in every aspect."
He spoke sternly to his persistent mother-in-law.
"Kevin, isn't your company on the verge of collapse?" "What? How do you know that?" "I have a friend who's well informed about business matters. Your company is seeking large loans, but you have no hope of repayment, do you?" "What?"
At my father-in-law's accusation, my brother-in-law Kevin started to panic, looking like he might spit up his drink.
"You know, the other day a reporter from the Financial Times came to interview me. He was talking about investments or something like that."
My husband responded, laying a business card from the well-known newspaper on the desk.
"And that reporter wanted me to tell you, the truth has already been uncovered." "What does that mean, Kevin?"
As my father-in-law interrogated him, Kevin seemed to resign himself and confessed, "I really did fail with my investment. I got carried away by a fellow entrepreneur's sweet talk. I rounded up investors and handed the money over to him, and then he disappeared. He ran off with the money. I was planning to sell the real estate I inherited from Dad to cover the debt." He admitted and hung his head in shame.
"But Kevin, you promised it would definitely be profitable. What about my share?" "What? Mom, you invested too?"
My husband threw up his hands in exasperation.
"When I heard it was guaranteed to be profitable, I invested $300,000. I told my friends the same story, and they should have invested about $200,000 in total." "What? So that's a total of $500,000?
I was shocked, following my husband's surprise. "Kevin, you call yourself a businessman and yet you can't even spot a scam like that. I can't entrust my fortune to someone like you. Have some shame. And you, I knew about your $300,000 investment. When you went to Hawaii, I checked all the bank cards in our house. You will have to take responsibility and leave this house."
"What? That's too much. This house is all I have." "You and Kevin were the ones who took this precious house for granted." "Dad, help me out here. Please help."
Ignoring their desperate pleas, my father-in-law left the room. Afterwards, my brother-in-law, Kevin, was left scrambling to repay the investment money, and he had to let go of his company. He tried to start another one, but with his reputation completely ruined, he failed. His high and mighty wife couldn't tolerate such a condition, and they soon divorced. The mother-in-law, whom she used to get along with them so well, turned hostile due to financial strains, leading to constant quarrels towards the end. My father-in-law and mother-in-law also ended up divorcing at a very old age. When it came to the division of assets during the divorce, the majority of the funds had to be used to repay the investments made to the mother-in-law's friends, leaving them with virtually nothing. Divorced and in a financial pinch, my mother-in-law is getting by with the little money she gets from my father-in-law every month, but all we hear are complaints. She lost her family, money, and is now living alone in loneliness. I bumped into her in the neighborhood the other day. She, still prideful as ever, claimed that living alone is comfortable, but her loneliness was clearly showing. As for me and my husband, we decided to live with my father-in-law. I spend my days enjoying gardening with my father-in-law in our spacious backyard. Furthermore, our son's family welcomed a new member, a girl, which made our family more lively. Above all, seeing my father-in-law looking so happy is the best. This is because his grandchildren and great-grandchildren come to visit every weekend. When it rains, my father-in-law would happily go for a walk, using the yellow umbrella I gave him. Seeing him like this, I feel content every day.
Listen, I just left my daughter at your house, so take care of her. I'm off on a business trip for a week.
It's always sudden with my sister-in-law, who loves to drop off her daughter at our house. Today, she seemed to have left her daughter at our doorstep and gone somewhere without even seeing me.
What? I'm in Hawaii right now. There's nobody at home.
Goodness, you can't just abandon a child at an unattended house. There's a severe heat warning, my niece is in danger. Oh, what in the world am I supposed to do? My name is Nicole. I'm a 32-year-old working housewife. I met my husband, Tom, through mutual friends and we got married. We, who prioritize our careers, decided on a childless lifestyle after a long discussion when we were considering marriage. We've been married for 6 years, and we have never regretted our decision. Our parents and in-laws were slightly disappointed, but they respected our decision and never said anything against it. Our siblings each have children, and thanks to that, we've been able to live worry-free and happily as a couple. However, the problem child amongst our siblings is the sister. This sister is my husband's one, and so, my sister-in-law. My sister-in-law, Megan, is a 26-year-old single mother. Last year, she divorced and moved back to her parents' house with her 2-year-old daughter. My niece, Lindsay, is now 3 years old. She's at a very demanding age. Because of this, my sister-in-law often visits our house. Apparently, it's because her elderly parents find it difficult to take care of Lindsay. Lindsay, don't draw on the wall.
Don't you like this snack? Oh no, don't throw it. Oh dear, did you have a little accident? Do we have a change of clothes? Yikes, that's an important tablet. Don't drop it.
You simply cannot take your eyes off her for a second. Yet, my sister-in-law is often lying on the couch, watching a movie with a drink in hand. I understand she's usually overwhelmed with child-rearing. But, completely leaving it to others, that's not acceptable, right? I don't have kids of my own, and I haven't spent much time with my brother's children either due to distance. And I'm the youngest sibling. To put it bluntly, I'm not good at taking care of children, it's not my forte. I can handle it occasionally. But,
Nicole, could watch Lindsay until tomorrow evening? You're off work tomorrow, right? What? Megan, do you have something to do? I've got some troublesome work to do. It's hard to ask my parents. They are old. Thanks. This is so sudden.
She often pushes babysitting onto me like this. Once in a while is fine, but frequently is just too much. Tom does mention it subtly when she asks too often, but my sister-in-law has a secret weapon which is hard to counter. The secret weapon? Well, it's her tear-jerking appeal. I'm sorry for always troubling you, Tom. But I'm having a hard time, too. I need your help, she says, looking up at Tom with teary eyes. Please, Tom, I'm begging you. And then what do you think happens? Well, it can't be helped, I understand. he said. Her brother fell. Well, it's not like he is pushing it onto me. My husband properly watches the child. Otherwise, I would have never forgiven her. Brings back memories. She looks exactly like my sister when she was young. My husband reminisces, squinting his eyes, remembering the times when his younger sister was still a child. He doesn't want children, but if we have kids, he will surely show affection. That's just how my husband is. But it's not like my husband can always take care of everything, which gives me a headache. Since my husband can work from home, he sometimes works at home even on holidays when he's busy. Today is exactly one of those days. I can't leave it to my husband who's working at home, so I am watching my niece by myself. Is it going to be like this until tomorrow? At least, while you're free watching TV, can't you take care of your own child? I asked, my face contorting, as my sister-in-law said, well, I'm going home, and left. Leaving her daughter behind, of course.
Mommy, are you going home? Then Lindsay too. Mommy's going to work. You're in the way, so stay here.
A harsh comment to her daughter who wanted to go home together, from my sister-in-law. Then, my sister-in-law quickly left, leaving behind her niece who was making a sad face. Isn't that a bit too much? While I was taken aback, my niece started crying in front of me. It wasn't a loud cry. She clung tightly to my clothes, her tears flowing as she bit her lips, trying to endure. Seeing her like that tugged at my heartstrings, and I couldn't help but hold her. Her tiny hand gripped my clothes tightly. You feel lonely, don't you? You want your mommy, don't you? She's so cute, yet I felt anger towards my sister-in-law for her cold attitude. Still, my sister-in-law might be suffering from parental stress. No matter how cute your own child is, you can get irritated and then feel guilty afterwards. My friend shared that with me. If my sister-in-law's coldness is due to that, I couldn't say anything. Even though I don't have a child, I'm trying my best to be of help to my sister-in-law, who's a mother. But my sister-in-law has a tendency to look down on me.
Since you don't have a child, you wouldn't understand. Do you think you'll be liked by children with that attitude? I'm contributing to society by increasing the population. Those who can't contribute should keep quiet.
My sister-in-law kept hitting where it hurts. There were times when my husband would admonish her, and there were times when he would get angry, but my sister-in-law didn't care. That's why people without children, she would say every time. Your brother is childless too, you know?
My brother took care of me, his little sister. He has parenting experience.
I doubt taking care of a little sister counts as parenting experience, but indeed, my husband does seem to be used to dealing with children. I feel frustrated at my inability to respond effectively. Even though my sister-in-law looks down on me, she often leaves her child to me. There are times when she would suddenly show up early in the morning, leave her niece, and quickly go somewhere else. Despite me telling her numerous times to let me know in advance, my sister-in-law didn't listen. If she were to let us know in advance, she might think that we would not open the door. I felt sorry for my niece who was always left behind by her mother, with tears in her eyes. On a certain midsummer day. This year is said to have a lot of extremely hot days, and indeed, there were too many hot days in a row. Unable to stand the intense heat, my husband and I came up with a plan. In the midst of that, a call from my sister-in-law. I have a bad feeling about this. Why is she calling my cell phone in the first place? Shouldn't she be calling her brother, my husband? While harboring a feeling of unease, I answered the call. Then, my sister-in-law, in a shrill voice, shouted, "Good morning. What are you doing? Still sleeping? It's already 7 in the morning, causing a headache." Holding my aching head, I listened to her talk with a heavy feeling.
We've been up for a while. What do you want? Oh, you're awake. Then it's good timing. I thought you were sleeping because no one answered the intercom no matter how many times I rang it. What do you mean? I just left my daughter in front of your house. I'm going on a business trip for work from today for a week. What? What are you saying? So, I'm off on a business trip. Please watch my daughter for me. Wait, what about your parents? Huh? Oh, Dad's been feeling unwell because of the heat. He's in the hospital for a while.
Now that she mentioned it, I remembered my husband saying something like that.
Mom is busy accompanying him, so she can't watch my daughter. You don't have any kids, so you must have a lot of free time. So, I'd appreciate it if you could take care of her. Wait a minute. What now? I'm in a hurry. She has a change of clothes, so she'll be fine. Gotta go. But I'm in Hawaii.
Huh? My shouting seemed to finally reach my sister-in-law. She had been babbling one-sidedly until then, but she finally stopped talking.
What did you just say? Hawaii? Who's there? How?
I mean, we're in Hawaii. We took some time off work to escape the heat in Arizona and we're here.
What? How could you do that without telling me? And why would you go to Hawaii to escape the heat?
Hawaii's temperature is around 86 degrees Fahrenheit. It's much more bearable than the extreme heat in Arizona, which is near 104 degrees.
I don't care about that. Who gave you permission to go to Hawaii?
We decided to go as a couple. We don't need anyone's permission, right?
You should have asked me for permission.
My response should have been, why should I care? But, unable to say so, I swallowed my words as my sister-in-law mumbled something.
What am I supposed to do?
Do about what?
I left my daughter in front of your house. Then you should go back and get her right away.
What are you saying?
I'm already at the train station.
No, you need to go back.
How can I? I'm about to go on a business trip. It's an important job.
Did you just start to say vacation?
Shut up. Just go home. Go back to Arizona and pick up my daughter.
I can't. Do you know how long that takes?
I don't care. Just go get my daughter right now.
Hey, waita. Unbelievably, my sister-in-law abruptly ended the call. Holding my now silent cell phone, I stood stunned for a moment. Immediately after regaining my senses, the first thing I did, naturally, was to go get my husband. At this moment, it was noon in Hawaii. With a 3-hour time difference, she had mentioned it would be around 3 p.m. in Arizona. The outdoor temperature is likely very hot. In a rush, I checked the weather in Arizona and found today's forecast predicted a scorching 104 degrees Fahrenheit. This was bad, really bad. While going to call my husband, who was at the hotel pool, I made a call. A few days later, my husband and I found ourselves in a certain location. Of course, we had returned from Hawaii. Immediately after returning, we headed straight to this particular location. That's a famous spa resort. Armed with the information that they were here, we made this special trip. As we approached our targeted inn, who should come out but the very person we were looking for? I suddenly started running and blocked the person's path.
Megan. Huh? Why are you here?
That's right, the they I referred to was my sister-in-law, Megan. I was shocked to learn from my mother-in-law where she was heading. It was a place she wouldn't normally go on a business trip. Upon seeing her there, it all made sense to me.
A business trip to the spa, huh? Nice. And you're arm in arm with a guy. That's some business trip.
That's what happened. My sister came out arm in arm with a man. Their demeanor was clearly more than just friendly colleagues. It was an obvious intimate relationship between a man and a woman. Hey, Megan, what the hell is this? The one angrily confronting her was my husband.
Hey, even you, big bro. Why? What are you doing, leaving your sweet little girl Lindsay alone? What on earth are you doing? This isn't a business trip, obviously.
No, this is not what it seems.
What's different about it?
My husband, red with anger, and my sister-in-law, pale with shock. Then, someone else chimes in.
What's going on here?
It's the man who was with my sister-in-law. Looking puzzled, the man alternates his gaze between my sister-in-law and my husband. Then, he looks at me, not understanding the situation. So, I decided to explain. That we're Megan's brother and sister-in-law. And that, Megan left her daughter Lindsay at our house, claiming it was a business trip. And it's a heat wave.
What?
The man was shocked at my words. He seemed unaware of such rough behavior. But my guess was off.
Megan, do you have a kid?
So that's what it was.
Oh, didn't you know? I didn't. I knew she was divorced, but she said she didn't have kids.
She does have one, a 3-year-old girl.
What?
When I told him the truth, the man's eyes popped wide open. My sister-in-law's face turned from pale to white. She looked like all the blood drained from her face.
Hey, stop discussing things without me. But it seemed like he didn't know. Of course I didn't tell him. Stop doing things on your own.
My sister-in-law's face turned from white to red. She was fuming at my actions. She looked like she was about to pounce on me any moment. But the man didn't let her. With a dumbfounded face, he looked at my sister-in-law.
Megan, is it true? Do you have a kid?
My sister-in-law was flustered.
No, it's not like that. Well, it is, but it's not. I was going to tell you eventually, but I just couldn't find the right time. I asked you, didn't I? Before we started dating, whether you had a kid. You clearly told me you didn't. That's not the point. I was planning to explain it step by step. Step by step? You should have answered when I first asked, that's the step. But that's not.
She was on the verge of tears. She desperately tried to explain, but he was in no mood to listen.
And you left your daughter behind to come on this trip. You left her alone in this scorching heat, enjoying your time without a care. Weren't you worried about your daughter? I wasn't worried because I knew my brother and sister-in-law would look after her. We were in Hawaii until yesterday. We rushed back ahead of schedule. Even if we had received the call and immediately came back, it would still take a few hours. Don't go around saying unnecessary things.
When I explained the situation to the man, my sister-in-law glared at me. But he pushed past her and came up to my husband and me.
I apologize for not being aware of this.
With that, the man apologized. That was unexpected. I thought he was the same type as my outrageous sister-in-law. He seems to be a very decent person.
So, where's Megan's daughter now?
The person who should be worried was my sister-in-law, not this stranger. While feeling exasperated at my sister-in-law, I simply told the man, it's been tough.
What do you mean? Well, since Megan doesn't seem to care, I wonder if there's any need to explain.
As I say that, the man's face pales once again. My sister-in-law's face turns red.
Hey, hold on a minute. I'm worried about my daughter too. But because you guys are taking care of her. Even when we were in Hawaii, you left her alone.
At my remark, my sister-in-law fell silent. The man looked at her in disbelief.
Your father-in-law is in the hospital. Your mother-in-law is accompanying him. We were in Hawaii. The mother is on a trip. Now, what do you think happened to Lindsay?
With that, I glared at my sister-in-law. The one who turned pale at that moment was the man.
No way!
There were no words to follow. Instead, my sister-in-law's scream dominated the scene.
I don't care what happens to that burden of a child,
she said, grinning.
Megan, are you serious? Yeah, I am. Hey, it seems like I really have no children now, so let's date with the intent to marry.
What a person. We are witnessing something unbelievable. My sister-in-law is delighted, even though her daughter might be in the worst situation. It's the worst. I gritted my teeth. Next to me, my husband was trembling with anger. Without caring about us, my sister-in-law reached out to the man.
Hey, now that the nuisance is gone, let's enjoy the rest of our trip. Hey!
It's no good, I can't stand it anymore. The moment I stepped forward to slap her, there was a sharp sound. It wasn't me. I hadn't laid a hand on her yet. It was the sound of a hand being slapped down. The man had slapped down the hand my sister-in-law had extended.
Huh?
She looked dumbfounded in surprise. The man gave her a cold look.
That's enough,
he said.
Huh? That's it, we're breaking up. What? Wait, what are you saying? I've realized since we started dating, I'm just sick of your self-centeredness. Huh? By this, by that, I want to go here, I want to go there, everything is all about you. And a child. You even kept silent about having a kid. And you left her alone in the sweltering heat. That's just unacceptable. But the child is already...
My sister-in-law, pale, tried to cling to the man. However, the hand she reached out was swatted away by him again.
That's the worst part. If you were a loving single parent taking good care of your child, I might have accepted it. But what's this? You see the kid as a nuisance? You want to enjoy your trip without worrying? How could I possibly stay with a woman like that?
My sister-in-law, her eyes wide open, her lips quivering. To her, the man declared,
I didn't know you were such an outrageous woman. It's impossible for me to marry a woman who doesn't cherish her child. We're breaking up. We're done. Stay away from me forever. No. Wait, don't leave me. You're the one who abandoned your daughter, right?
The man, yelling back at my sister-in-law trying to cling to him, turned his back on her and walked into the hotel. The man came out carrying his clothes and luggage while my sister-in-law stood in stunned silence. Without a glance at my sister-in-law, who was watching, the man apologized to us and left.
No!
After the man had disappeared from view for a while, my sister-in-law crumbled to the ground and sat down.
No! He was the man I finally snagged! I thought I could live comfortably playing around.
My sister-in-law slumped on the ground. Looking down at her with cold eyes are my husband and me. She got what she deserved. There couldn't be a more fitting phrase.
You don't deserve to be a mother. We're going to consult a lawyer and take appropriate action. Don't ever step foot in our home again.
My husband spat these words at my sobbing sister-in-law and then turned his back on her. I followed suit.
Wait! What about Lindsay? What happened to her?
She threw the question at our retreating backs. However, without looking back, I saw my sister-in-law, now a tearful mess, glaring at us. I simply said, "Well," and proceeded to follow my husband. Her screams echoed. After that, we banned my sister-in-law, who wouldn't be out of place being charged with parental neglect, from our house. A complicated legal process followed, resulting in a no-contact order. The things my sister-in-law had done were unforgivable, and her parents kept apologizing to us sincerely. My sister-in-law, who prioritized her relationship with her boyfriend over her daughter, was dating a married man. He had made all sorts of promises, but he turned out to be just as bad as her. In the end, the man's wife found out about the affair. With nowhere to go and in financial distress, my sister-in-law disappeared somewhere. We heard rumors that she was seen in the city at night, but nothing certain. I suspected that we would never meet my sister-in-law again. That's what I thought. But as for Lindsay, my niece.
Hey, Aunt Nicole. What's this cake?
She's very lively and enjoying life at our home. Actually, on that day when I was in Hawaii, after receiving a phone call from my sister-in-law, I hurriedly called my brother. Our home is a solid 2-hour drive from my brother's, but as it turned out, he was close by that day. A few hours before my sister-in-law's call, I had received a message from my brother, saying he was nearby on a family trip. He asked if we could meet, but I had just replied, "Sorry, we're in Hawaii." I dialed my brother and asked him to look after my niece. My brother agreed without hesitation, and hurried to our house, leaving his hotel early in the morning. Just 15 minutes after my call, my brother arrived at our house and safely picked up my niece. Apparently, she had been crying a lot in front of the house. I was relieved that my brother was nearby. Then, my husband and I hastily cut short our trip to Hawaii and returned home. We went to see my sister-in-law right away. My niece didn't seem to miss her at all, given that my sister-in-law had not been a good caregiver to begin with. Right now, my niece, eyes shining, is fixated on the cake on the table. To her, I say,
"Today, we're celebrating." Celebrating? That's right. We're celebrating Lindsay becoming a part of our family. A part of your family? Yes. That means your uncle and I are going to be with you all the time. Really?
At my words, my niece's eyes widened and a huge smile spread across her face. To her, I nod firmly. "We're looking forward to being with you, Lindsay." At that moment, she leapt into my arms and I hugged her tightly in return.